Hey, are we ready to get into some deeper stuff? I wanted to talk to everybody today about some things that the Lord has been teaching me. Honestly, it's kind of weird, but most things are. I would say this is something that isn't just about your basic relationship with the Lord, even though it's the most important thing. Intimacy is by far the most important thing. I would say even second to that would be resting in Him. But what the Lord has been teaching me last, few months, I'd say at least more in depth, is about a combination of two things. It's about engaging different dimensions, and it's also about redeeming time. And so we've talked a little in the past about redeeming time, but something that's a little different that He's been doing with me lately is He's been teaching me that when we actually can engage different timelines or different dimensions or even places in the timeline we're at from maybe going back in time, we can do things that will change the outcome of what will happen. And so what that does is actually when we go and we say from the beginning, Adam and Eve, right, in the garden, they had the opportunity to continue on the ideal timeline. But what happened was they chose to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And when they did that, then all of a sudden things shifted into an alternate timeline where there was separation. And so every single time we make a choice to separate from the Lord, basically we are creating an alternate timeline. And so when we go and we source from Him and do what we're supposed to do with Him outside of separation, then all of a sudden things unite. And so even if things have been separated in the past and we have these timelines that basically stink, I'm going to say that, everything can be redeemed. If you have gone through a difficult time in your life and say you got married, you realized it wasn't who God had set you up with, but you did it anyway. Then it ended in divorce, and you are living a life that just seems like you went off track, right? It's possible you really did go off track because you chose to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what's good for me, what's bad for me, all that, instead of just doing what's life-giving that the Lord was leading you to. Sourcing from Him, getting everything from Him. And so if that happened, you can ask the Lord to take you back on that timeline and just take you back to that time and see what He wants to do with it to make a different choice. So when we do this and we make a different choice back in the timeline that you're in, or in the timeline He's leading you to, all of a sudden what happens is things merge back together, and there becomes kind of, if you think about a wire that's twisted together, right? And then you get these little branches that come off of the wires, and they need to just, it's like all of a sudden it's real frayed down here. Well, what happens is it gets twisted back into the original timeline. And so the more we redeem the time, the more things come back into unity, and it comes back into the oneness of being with Him and only in Him, in that vine, right? And so if we allow Him to use us, we can do this in helping others, other timelines, anything like that, to come back into agreement with Him. And ultimately, this is one of the things that He has asked us to do that I never understood. I didn't understand redeeming time for a long time. It says we're supposed to redeem the times, and I'm like, what does that even mean? And so He started teaching me little by little how to engage time and what to do, how to have time not rule us, that sort of thing. But then he started taking me back into different time periods to help others. And I started to see things change. And now he's even allowing me to see into different dimensions, because what happens is we're multi-dimensional beings, and each timeline has a different dimension that it attaches itself to. And so if we engage these different dimensions, we have very different lives. And so we can engage these different dimensions and see what we're doing, how we're connected to other people. We can even have a completely different life in these different dimensions. We do have different lives in these different dimensions because they're alternate timelines. But once we start engaging these things and being able to go back to the split, wherever it split off, then we can actually unite these and have these dimensions come back together instead of be separated. So I know this sounds a little complicated, but really it all has to do with the Lord. So just whatever he leads you to do it. The whole point of this talk today is to open your mind to a different way of thinking and recognizing that we can function in different dimensions at the same time. We can affect time. We can merge things back together. We can bring Father's will into the earth. And the coolest thing that he showed me about this is that when we fully redeem the time, and these timelines start to merge back together, things start to come in line with his purposes more and more and more in the earth, until finally heaven and earth merge together and we have the new heaven and new earth. And so it's just an amazing goal that seems unreachable, but he has shown me how it's not. And it's something that we can do today. And it's something that we will be able to see if we open ourselves to it. And so if you are already, fairly mature in your walk, nobody's got it all together, right? But if you're fairly mature in your walk and you're like, what's next? I feel like it's just been the same old thing. Ask him, hey, can I start engaging this? Can I start working for you to change things and to bring things back together and to see things come to pass? And it will probably look very different for you than it looks for me. For me, I see a lot of this stuff in ministry. When I'm ministering to other people, we're engaging together, and the Lord will show me a different dimension in them. And then I'll be able to engage that. Sometimes I engage it for people better than they do. And that's really only because I'm opened up to it and they haven't gotten there yet. Either that or their conscious mind isn't ready to deal with that. And so you can just ask the Lord, am I ready for this? And if I'm not, can you get me ready for it? That's the best thing you can do, is to just ask about that and say, hey, I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to do the things that you do. And we saw that Yeshua took everything and redeemed it. Do you remember? I don't know, maybe you haven't thought like this, but for me in my past, I've thought, okay, so what about all of these Old Testament people? How does Yeshua dying on the cross and being risen, how does that affect everyone before him? Are they just all, destined to hell? I remember thinking these things. And now I look back and I laugh at myself because I understand that there's a difference. And I understand that there's way more to it. And my theology has changed and shifted over the years tremendously. But what he's shown me is that it's so easy because Yeshua was truly accessing all the dimensions, all the timelines, to bring them back into unity and to redeem everything. And he was able to do that through this amazing sacrifice and life. And so it wasn't just about life, or it wasn't just about the sacrifice. It was about being alive yet again after the death. And so we can recognize that this also, when we engage these different dimensions and timelines and all of that and redeem the time, we understand that death isn't permanent, because we've been taught all in the earth all our lives, that everyone has to die, and there's a finality to it. That basically, if you're going to live, it's just going to be this life in heaven, not life in the earth, that sort of thing. Everyone is bought into this. And, truly as a man thinketh, so he is, right? So this is, if you think like that, that's what will happen to you. But I'll tell you what, death isn't final. It never has to be final. Always there is redemption. Always there's resurrection available. There's always a time where we can go, okay, I don't accept that that's the timeline that I'm unifying with. And so what I do is I am unifying with this idea of life and life and life. Okay. So if I die, I come back and I'm living again. This is my lot. I'm doing this all the time. This is so important that we be able to go, okay, this is what I am unifying with. Because whatever we grab onto and we unify with is what we will experience. The same thing with the different dimensions. If I choose to focus in a different dimension, I can live in that dimension and I can wrap myself around that dimension. And it would be what I experience. The only thing is I know that there's a different way for me. Like the Lord has shown me that these different dimensions aren't the ones that I need to be grabbing onto, that there's a different thing that's going to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you guys, open your minds a little bit, open your hearts to the Lord and ask him to help you start learning and growing in him and experiencing the different timelines. All right, have a great day.